Right. So today we're going to be doing a deep dive into some businesses that are considered very risky to start.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Looking forward to it.
yeah, this should be interesting. We're looking at a breakdown of 10 businesses that are particularly challenging to start right now. And some of these are pretty out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you look at a list like this, you have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
Right? Because
sure.
what might be risky for one person might not be risky for another. It really depends on, your background, your experience, all kinds of
Your
factors.
risk tolerance,
Yeah, your risk tolerance, exactly.
for sure.
But I think it's a good starting point for a conversation about, what makes a business venture risky in the first
Yeah,
place.
I think it's good to look at these, and then we can look at what are the kind of commonalities
Right.
between all of them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's interesting, they're all over the map. We're talking about sending tourists into space.
Wow.
We're talking about building the brains of the future with AI hardware.
That sounds pretty ambitious.
Right. These are not,
Yeah.
your average,
Yeah.
lemonade stand.
No kidding.
Um, and then we're talking about like revolutionizing agriculture with vertical farms.
Yeah, I mean that's a big one, right? Because you're talking about food production, which is, essential to human survival.
Yeah. And you would think that's a pretty safe bet,
Right.
but
You would think so.
apparently not.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges there, as we'll see.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. The first one on the list is cryptocurrency exchanges. And, I don't know a ton about cryptocurrency, but it seems like there's a lot of money in it. So why is that such a risky business to get into?
Yeah, well, I think the main reason is because it's such a new and volatile market.
Oh, okay.
The value of cryptocurrencies can fluctuate wildly, which makes it very difficult to predict profitability.
I see.
And then there's also the issue of regulation.
Yeah.
Governments around the world are still trying to figure out how to regulate cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
And that creates a lot of uncertainty for businesses operating in this space.
And security too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Security is huge.
Yeah.
You're dealing with digital assets that are very attractive to hackers.
Right.
So you need to have really robust security measures in place to protect your customers' funds.
So you're not just worried about, the market going up and down.
Right.
You're also worried about, people just stealing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got all these external threats that you have to worry about.
So that's pretty intense.
Okay.
Maybe something a little less volatile. Biotech and pharmaceutical startups.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a whole different ballgame.
Developing new drugs and medical tech sounds amazing. Almost like a sci-fi movie.
It is pretty cool. When you think about the potential to cure diseases and improve people's lives,
Yeah.
but it's also incredibly risky.
What are some of the big hurdles in that industry?
Well, one of the biggest is the cost of research and development. I mean, it can take years and millions of dollars to bring a new drug to market.
Wow.
And then even if you do develop a successful drug, there's no guarantee that it will be approved by the FDA.
Oh, right.
So there's a lot of uncertainty involved.
So even if you have like the best drug in the world,
Right.
it could still just get shot down.
It could, yeah. And then even if it does get approved, you're still competing with other pharmaceutical companies that have much bigger marketing budgets.
Oh, yeah. You're a tiny little startup
Exactly.
going up against Pfizer.
Right.
Okay, well, let's move on to something that I think a lot of people can relate to, which is social media. Trying to launch a new platform today seems like a pretty risky proposition.
Yeah, you're telling me.
I mean, you've got the giants.
It's like trying to compete with the sun.
Yeah, how do you even...
Right. I mean, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're just so dominant.
How do you even begin to get people to switch over?
Well, you need to offer something truly unique and compelling.
Yeah.
You need to solve a problem that the existing platforms aren't addressing.
Okay, so it's not enough to just be like a slightly better Facebook.
No, not at all.
You need to be doing something totally different.
Exactly. You need to have a clear value proposition that sets you apart from the competition.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears from the digital world to something a little more grounded, vertical farming. This one sounds pretty cool. Growing food indoors in stacked layers, it sounds futuristic and sustainable.
Yeah, it definitely has the potential to revolutionize agriculture.
So what's the catch?
Well, the main challenge is the cost.
Yeah.
The upfront investment required to build a vertical farm is significant.
I see.
You need specialized equipment-controlled environments and a lot of technical expertise.
So it's not just like...
It's not your backyard garden.
No.
It's a highly sophisticated operation.
Okay, that makes sense. Now this one is for the real techie people out there. AI hardware development. Designing the brains of the future. I mean, this sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. What makes this so risky?
Well, for one thing, it's a very complex and rapidly evolving field.
Oh, I bet.
You need to have a deep understanding of both hardware and software, and you need to be able to keep up with the latest advancements.
So it's not just about, being good at coding or something.
Right. It's about being at the forefront of innovation.
Wow.
And then there's also the competition. You're up against some of the biggest tech companies in the world who are all investing heavily in AI.
Like Google.
Yeah, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they're all in the game.
Okay, so you're not just competing with other startups.
Right. You're competing with the giants.
Okay, well, let's go from the brains of the future to the final frontier, space tourism. Now, this is something I've always dreamed of doing. I mean, who hasn't wanted to experience zero gravity or see the Earth from space?
Yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list.
But I imagine it's a pretty risky business to be in.
Oh, yeah, extremely risky.
What makes it so challenging?
Well, for starters, the cost of launching anything into space is astronomical.
That makes sense.
You're talking about billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And then there's the safety issue.
Yeah.
Space travel is inherently dangerous, and any accident could have catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, that's true. You don't want to be the company that has the first space tourism accident.
No, absolutely not.
Okay, well, let's come back down to earth for a minute and talk about something a little more relatable, restaurants.
Okay.
Now, this is one that I think a lot of people think is a pretty safe bet. I mean, everybody loves to eat.
Right.
So why is it that restaurants have one of the highest failure rates?
Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the competition. The restaurant industry is incredibly competitive, especially in major cities.
I can imagine.
There are so many restaurants vying for customers' attention.
And everybody's got their favorite.
Right. And people are always looking for the next new thing. So you really need to stand out from the crowd.
So it's not enough to just have, good food.
No, you need to have something special, something unique.
Okay. And then on top of that, you've got all the overhead costs.
Oh, yeah. The overhead is huge. Rent, utilities, staff, food costs, it all adds up.
Right. And then you're working on pretty thin margins.
Exactly. The profit margin on a restaurant meal is typically very small.
So you got to be doing a lot of volume.
You do, yeah. You need to have a lot of customers coming through the door.
Okay. Well, let's move on to another one that I think is pretty interesting. Launching a new independent news media or content creation platform. In today's world where everybody is just bombarded with information,
Right.
providing reliable and engaging content seems more important than ever.
It definitely is.
But it also seems like a pretty crowded space.
Oh, it's incredibly crowded. You've got established media outlets, online news sites, social media platforms. Everyone's competing for eyeballs.
So how do you break through all that noise?
Well, you need to have a clear niche, a target audience that you're trying to reach.
Okay.
And you need to produce high-quality content that's informative, engaging, and trustworthy.
So it's not just about, being the loudest voice.
No, it's about being the most valuable voice.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you've got the whole challenge of figuring out how to monetize it.
Right. I mean, how are you going to make money?
Yeah.
That's the big question.
Advertising subscriptions.
Yep, those are the traditional models, but they're becoming increasingly challenging.
I can imagine. Okay, last but not least, electric vehicle manufacturing.
Yeah.
With the push for sustainability and, we see these companies like Tesla just exploding in popularity.
Right.
It seems like this is the industry to be in.
It does seem that way.
But it also seems like a pretty risky endeavor.
Oh, it definitely is.
What are some of the challenges there?
Well, for starters, the cost of developing and manufacturing EVs is still very high. You're talking about complex battery technology, sophisticated electronics, and a lot of specialized manufacturing equipment.
Right.
And then there's the competition. You're not just competing with Tesla, you're also competing with all the major automakers who are now investing heavily in EVs.
Right. So you've got all the legacy car companies.
Exactly. They're all trying to catch up.
Okay. So it's a pretty crowded field.
It is, yeah. And it's only going to get more competitive in the years to come.
Okay. So we've gone through this whole list of businesses, and it's clear that these are not for the faint of heart.
No kidding.
But I'm curious now to look at what are some of the common threads that run through all of them? What are the things that make these ventures so risky?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see some interesting patterns emerge as we dive deeper.
Okay, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and explore those common threads in more detail.
Sounds good.
All right, see you in a minute. So we've talked about all these businesses that are considered super risky to start.
Yeah.
And, It's pretty clear why, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I'm curious, why would anyone even try to do this? What is it about these ventures that's so appealing, even though they're so risky?
Well, I think for some people, it's the challenge. They're drawn to the idea of building something from scratch, of taking on a big risk and potentially reaping a big reward.
So it's not just about the money.
Yeah,
It's about the thrill of the chase.
yeah, exactly. It's about pushing the limits of what's possible and proving to themselves that they can do it.
And I'm sure for some people, it's also about making a difference in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of these ventures are trying to solve big problems like climate change or food security.
Right. Like, if you can figure out a way to make space tourism work,
Yeah.
you're kind of opening up a whole new frontier for humanity.
You are, yeah. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Okay, so let's say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, you know what? I'm feeling inspired. I want to take a risk. I want to start something big. What advice would you give them?
Well, the first thing I would say is to do your research. Make sure you understand the market, the competition, the regulatory landscape.
So don't just jump in blindly.
Right, exactly. You need to have a solid plan.
And you need to be prepared for the long haul.
Yeah, these ventures often take years to come to fruition.
So you got to be patient.
You do, and you got to be persistent. There are going to be setbacks along the way,
Oh, I'm sure.
but you got to keep your eye on the prize and keep moving forward.
And you got to be willing to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. The market is constantly changing, so you need to be able to adjust your plans accordingly.
Okay, so we've talked about the mindset and the skills needed to tackle these risky ventures. But let's dig a little deeper into one characteristic that seems to be a recurring theme: competition. I mean, every business faces competition, but what makes it particularly fierce in these fields?
Well, you're often going up against really well-established players with deep pockets and tons of experience.
Like if you're trying to launch a new social media platform.
Right, you're competing with Facebook and Instagram,
Yeah, exactly.
who have billions of users and billions of dollars.
And they're not just sitting around twiddling their thumbs.
No, they're constantly innovating and trying to stay ahead of the curve.
So how do you even begin to compete with that?
Well, you need to find a niche, a specific area where you can excel, and you need to be able to move quickly and adapt to change.
So you're basically looking for a crack in their armor.
Yeah, exactly. You're looking
Yeah.
for a weakness that you can exploit.
And then you got to hope that they don't just copy you.
Right, because they have the resources to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay, so competition is one factor that makes these ventures so risky. What else?
Well, another big one is the need for significant capital investment.
Like, how much are we talking about here?
It depends on the venture, but it could easily be millions or even billions of dollars. And it's not just about the initial investment. You also need to have enough money to cover your operating expenses while you're getting up and running.
And that could take a while.
Oh, yeah, it could take years to become profitable.
So you got to have deep pockets.
You do. And you got to be comfortable with the idea of losing money in the short term.
Yeah, I guess that's where those venture capitalists come in.
Right. They're the ones who are willing to take on that kind of risk.
Okay, so you got to have a great idea. You got to have a lot of money, and you got to be able to compete with the big boys. Anything else?
Yeah. One more thing that's really important is having a great team.
Okay.
You can't do this alone. You need people who are experts in their respective fields.
So you need engineers.
Yeah, engineers, designers, marketers, salespeople.
And you need people who are passionate about the mission.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
You need people who believe in what you're doing and who are willing to work hard to make it a success.
Okay, so let's recap. You got to have a great idea. You got to have a lot of money. You got to be able to compete. You got to have a great team. Anything else I'm missing?
Well, one more thing that's important is timing.
Mm.
You need to be entering the market at the right time.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you're too early, the market might not be ready for your product or service.
Oh, okay. So like if you had tried to launch a cryptocurrency exchange 10 years ago.
Right. People probably wouldn't have even known what you were talking about.
Yeah, good point. And if you're too late?
If you're too late, you might miss the boat. The market might already be saturated.
So it's all about finding that sweet spot.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about striking while the iron is hot.
Well, this has been incredibly enlightening. I mean, we've really dug into what makes these high-risk ventures so challenging. But I got to say, I'm also feeling pretty inspired. It's amazing to see what people are capable of achieving when they set their minds to it.
It is, yeah. It's truly inspiring.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground today. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a question.
Okay.
Knowing all that we know now, if you were to take on one of these ventures, which one would it be? And what would be the first step you would take to overcome its challenges?
That's a tough one. They're all so interesting. But if I had to choose, I think I would go with biotech and pharmaceutical startups.
Oh, wow. Okay. Why that one?
Well, I think it's a field with enormous potential to improve human health.
Hmm.
And I'm really passionate about using science and technology to make a difference in the world.
That's awesome. So what would be your first step?
Well, the first thing I would do is assemble a team of brilliant scientists and researchers.
Okay.
And then I would start by identifying a specific unmet medical need that we could address.
So you're not just going to like go into the lab and start mixing chemicals.
No, I would want to have a clear goal in mind.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it for today. Expert, thanks so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of high-risk ventures. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep dreaming big.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about, the potential these ventures have to really change things.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always the big ideas either,
What do you mean?
Sometimes it's the small things, the problems that nobody's really paid attention to before.
Oh, I see.
And someone comes along and says, hey, what if we did it this way? And suddenly it's like a whole new world.
So you're saying that anyone can be an innovator?
Exactly. It's not just for, the geniuses or the billionaires.
It's about looking at things with a fresh perspective.
Yeah, and having the courage to try something new.
That's really inspiring. Okay, so let's say you're someone listening to this and you're thinking, man, I've got an idea. I want to take a risk. I want to make a difference. But you're also feeling a little overwhelmed. Like, where do you even begin?
Well, I think the first thing is to just start,
Yeah.
Don't get bogged down in planning and analysis.
Just dive in? Yeah, exactly. Take that first step, even if it's a small one. And then just keep moving forward.
So don't be afraid to fail.
Right. Failure is just a part of the process. It's how you learn and grow.
I like that. Okay, so you've got that spark. You've got an idea. What's the next step?
Validate it. Talk to people. Get feedback.
Like potential customers.
Yeah. Customers, mentors, advisors.
Yeah.
Anyone who can give you an honest opinion.
So you're not just stuck in your own little bubble.
Right. You need to get out there and see if your idea actually resonates with people.
Okay, that makes sense. And then once you've validated your idea...
Then it's time to build a team.
Okay.
You need people who share your vision, who have the skills and experience to help you bring your idea to life.
So you're not just looking for yes men.
No. You need people who will challenge you, who will push you to be better.
Yeah, and you need people who you can trust.
Absolutely. Trust is essential.
Okay, so we've talked about taking that first step, validating your idea, building a team. Any other advice for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Yeah, one more thing. Be persistent. There are going to be challenges along the way.
Oh, I'm sure.
But you can't give up. You got to keep pushing forward even when it gets tough.
So it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The long game. And you got to be in it for the long haul.
Well, I think that's some really great advice. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the risks, the rewards, the challenges, the opportunities, and we've heard from someone who's been there and done that.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
It really has.
Huh.
So to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the world of high-risk ventures.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we hope you've been inspired to maybe take a risk of your own.
Go for it.
You never know what you might achieve. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep dreaming big.
See you in the next deep dive.